Okay, welcome back to T2's Book Club. Today I want to talk about Three Body Problem by Cixin, which I'm 100% certain I pronounced that correctly. So, this one is different from my other reviews because all of the books I've read so far I really liked. This one I have mixed emotions about because I started out not really liking it, but then it grew on me, and by the end of the book I really liked it. So now I don't know if I want to get the sequels because I kind of do, because it kind of started getting like Ender's Game at the end. So I think the rest of the books are going to be good. But the problem was, this book's written by a Chinese man, Cixin Liu, and translated by Qin Liu. I'm assuming that's his relative. Actually, no, Chinese names are backwards. I think they reversed them. I guess their last name is Liu. Because normally their last name is first in Chinese. I don't know. So, how to explain it? It starts out talking about a lot of communist Chinese shit about the Cultural Revolution with Chairman Mao Zedong, and I don't know anything about any of that. So it kind of got boring, and there's like this woman, and she's like joins the communist. There's different names of people that are like rebels or whatever, or they're like, I don't even know what they call them. A bunch of different things, and like she goes to work at this satellite dish. And there's this base that they're like secretly doing scientific experiments or something, and then like turns out she figured out that if you send a radio signal towards the sun would amplify it, and you could send messages looking like the search for extraterrestrial life. And she ended up sending a signal to this alien species. So I heard this book was about a first contact with aliens. Which it kind of is, but it doesn't get there till like over halfway through the book, really. There's a bunch of communist bullshit you gotta wade through. A bunch of political stuff that I don't know anything about. There's this one character, Dashi. He's like this cop that's really smart. There's this one guy, Wei Chang, I really liked. He's like this mathematician, or he's not really a mathematician, he's a prodigy kind of he doesn't like math. He sees numbers as shapes, and he sees shapes as numbers, and he can kind of like do a lot of complicated math shit without showing his work. So he's like just a savant sort of, and like it starts getting into this virtual reality video game. And another thing I didn't like about it was that this video game isn't really a game at all. It's like you go into this virtual reality environment and you're on this planet, and there's like these big buildings everywhere and this pyramid, and like you're basically learning about these aliens by playing this game. Because the aliens, they don't describe what they look like, but they're like, they can shed all of the water and dehydrate themselves and hibernate. Because they're living on this planet. This is where the three body problem comes in. It has like 3 suns. So you're playing this video game, and like you're just kind of like Aristotle or Galileo or Copernicus, one of these guys that's trying to figure out how the universe works. So you're kind of like seeing how people from different eras figured out how the universe worked, and like Newtonian physics, and the three body problem is about 3 bodies. Like the math guy, he goes to this Buddhist thing, and he's telling he has to find emptiness, not nothingness, but emptiness. And what he says is like, imagine, or he figured this out on his own, I think. Imagine empty space, and you have like one planet in it, or one body. There's nothing to that. It's just sitting there stationary, and it dies. There's nothing to that. And then if you have 2 bodies, they're either going to like smack into each other and sit there and they're dead again, or they're going to spiral around each other infinitely, and it's like the dance of death. So either way, it's either stationary or it's constantly in motion. There's nothing really interesting to it. But once he added a 3rd body, you have like the gravitation from this body is pulling this body as it comes towards it, and then it pulls off of this body, and it's like slingshots around, and it keeps the math started cascading down his brain, like all these different things. Like that's when they had to invent calculus, I guess, to figure out the motion of planetary bodies. Like we had this in our solar system, we had all these like wandering stars, they called them, where they would go across the sky, and then they would kind of go backwards a little bit, and they would go forwards again. That's because we're all in different planetary orbits, we're different distances from the sun, and all of our planets are moving at different speeds. So at some point, you're kind of lined up with the planet, and you're not going any faster than it, so it's not tracing across the sky at a constant speed. So if this planet planet has 3 suns, and the planet itself is a body, that's a 4-body problem, isn't it? Because you're having 3 suns and a planet. So what happened was, they went through these different eras. They call them stable and chaotic eras. So whenever, like they didn't know what the suns were at first. Because like the sun has this layer of gas around it, and when it's far away, you don't see that coronal gas around the sun. It look like a flying star. So they were trying to figure out like what are these flying stars and what are these suns. Like it would either get too hot, or the suns would align and it would like freeze the planet somehow. I don't really understand that part at all. But like they had this thing like if you see 3 flying stars, that's a dread omen. Like civilization is going to be destroyed, because then all the suns start coming towards the planet all at once, and they whipped right by it and they burned it to a crisp. And like I don't know how these aliens are surviving these cataclysmic events with the suns burning up the planet. I guess they're in like deep underground or inside one of these pyramids, and most of them die off, but some of them keep the technology and they keep progressing. And like the industrial age and then the information age, and they keep getting on where they're making like spaceships and stuff. And that's when it kind of gets interesting, because the aliens send a signal back, because one of them's like is bored with his life, and he makes up this note. He says like, don't respond to this message because we're going to invade your planet. And he's really just trying to get them to not contact us, because he knows if his people come to Earth, they're going to take over the Earth. And like it's kind of complicated. You'd have to read the book. But it got me thinking about some stuff, like, and the good books always do kind of make you think. Like I was thinking about like, what if our sun had one of these, like, what we see is the size of the sun isn't actually how big it is, because maybe we're just seeing the gaseous outer layer, and the actual sun, the core of it, is not as big, because we think the sun is massively huge compared to our planet. But what if it's not? So when we think light bends around the sun and the space is curved, what if it's not? What if the light is going through that gaseous outer layer? Have we accounted for the possibility that that's true? I don't know. Another thing I was thinking about was the red shift and the blue shift. I think red shift means planet or a star is going away from you, and blue is it's going towards you, because it condenses the white light spectrum. But have we considered, like, what if a star actually emits blue light and then it's moving away from us at a point where it red shifts, but it's actually even more redshifted or less redshifted than we think it is, because the light that it actually emits is a certain color, and then you're condensing from the starting point of the color of the light? Because we kind of assume that all the stars emit white light, right? And then they either shift red or shift blue. But our sun is yellow to us, so it's already redshifted, and it's not moving away from us, it's staying with us. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's redshifted and it's moving away from us, it would even be even more redshifted. It would actually come back into like a different color, or purple or something. But it's not really how it works. But like, are we accounting for the fact of the light emitted by the star is a certain color, and then whether it's moving away from us or not, and you combine those two things? I don't know. So I was thinking about those things, and there's a lot more to this book. There's like this one guy, he studies like nanomaterials. He's like the main character, I think, or one of the main characters. And they end up slicing this boat into like 40 different pieces, because they string a net of nanomaterials across it, and it just like molecularly slices this boat, because they have to kill everybody on this boat within like a certain time frame, or they'll destroy the hidden messages from the aliens that nobody had. And then here's a fucking even crazier thing that happens. The aliens decide they're going to stop all scientific progress on Earth by sending 2 protons to Earth, which was already crazy enough that they were able to do that, because they said it would be like shooting a mosquito on Pluto or something from wherever on Earth, because it has to go so many light years and not hit anything. And how would that work? How would you stop our scientific evolution? Well, what they did was, since protons, I don't know how this is even true or not, but like apparently they travel through 9 dimensions, or they're composed of 9 dimensions, and they had a particle accelerator or a computer or something that was able to unfold it into 2 dimensions. Like first they fucked up and they made it into 1 dimension and 3 dimensions, and they were seeing like this string everywhere, reflecting light, but it has no mass, and you couldn't really do anything with it. And then they had all these like platonic solids appeared, and they had to like tow them away with spaceships, but they didn't have any mass. It was like a baby could lift it or something. It was like really crazy high science stuff in here, and like I kind of got it, like they jumped the shark a little bit, like it was a little bit crazy. And then they finally unfolded into 2 dimensions, and they were etching like a computer, what do you call it, like a motherboard and shit, to make a computer on a 2-dimensional plane of a massless proton, or it had like barely any mass. What are you etching on? What are you talking about? You got spaceships out there that are carving, using, I don't even know what they were using, but they were carving this computer. So if you just go ahead and grant it, that's possible. But they fold it back up into like 6 dimensions, and it's like maybe this big. And then, because if you fold it beyond that, it'll lose all its mass completely. You won't even be able to see it. So they had to make like 4 or 5 of them, right? They made 4 of them. So then they're all using like quantum entanglement to communicate with each other. And then they were able to fold them back into 9 dimensions where they're like invisible, but they're still like they're computers. And somehow they're accessing it. I don't know how any of this fucking shit works. So then they sent 2 of them to Earth, and 2 of them stayed quantum entangled on their planet. And basically, since they're computers and they're able to like travel through all these dimensions at the speed of light, they could interrupt all the testing we do on particle accelerators and give out false results. Like when we smash protons together in a collider, those would jump in and let themselves be destroyed and then reassemble themselves and send off the wrong data that would confuse us. And they could like one proton could like do 100,000 accelerators if we kept making accelerators and putting them on different planets, and they're like, it's got crazy. It's like, I don't even know. That was some wild trippy shit. I mean, a proton that has a computer inside of it, and then they're talking about like the proton was so vast on the scale of 9 dimensions that it's like pretty much a whole universe. And then they were saying like, well, does it have intelligence inside this universe? Like, oh, I'm sure there were like, just like our universe has probably tons of alien species with intelligences and civilizations. Like, whenever you smash a proton together, it just destroys a whole universe with all these intelligences and civilizations. This happens all the time. Even neutrons decaying does that. So it's just like all the time. You have to just accept that universes are constantly being destroyed every second, and it's just how life is. Which makes everything really depressing and sad. As long as we're on our macro level where we get to live for like 80 years, I guess we get to enjoy that much time. But this book's depressing. I mean, it's depressing for different levels. The micro scale and the macro scale if you're a communist Chinese man. Yeah.